Senator Susan Collins, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I want to start by saying you were first elected in 1996. I did some research. The top grossing movie at the time was Independence Day. Top in the charts were the Spice Girls and a few other artists I wrote down here, Celine Dion. A lot's changed in our world and in our politics. What keeps you in the fight here in the Senate?
I have a real passion for public service. It is one way that you can make a real difference in the lives of the people that you represent, families that you love. It's a wonderful way to feel that you can affect the course of human events. There are other professions that you can do that in as well. Healthcare and teaching are two that come to mind. News reporting may be another. But for me, public service has been a way for me to give back to communities in Maine and to a state that I dearly love.
And now you've got this new gig. You're the chair of the Appropriations Committee. It's the reason we're in this big, beautiful room. My question is, first off, how are you feeling about getting this new position? And then what are your goals policy-wise for the next term?
I am just so excited to be the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. It's considered one of the most powerful positions in the entire Congress. And most of all, from my perspective, it puts me in the best place that gives me the most opportunity to make a difference for my state and my country. So that is very satisfying to me. It's been a long climb up the ladder of seniority, and with each passing year, I've been able to do more for the state of Maine. For example, over the last 3 years, I've been able to fund more than 500 worthwhile community projects, a new fire station, helping a rural healthcare center, for example, supporting the University of Maine or our community colleges. And that is very satisfying. Those projects span the state and amount to more than $1 billion in the last 3 years.
And I should note that you mentioned you're also the first Republican woman to hold the position. About the dynamics of power here on Capitol Hill, obviously Republicans now have a trifecta of control. Donald Trump is returning to the White House. What are you expecting to be the dynamic of power? In the House, Speaker Johnson's sort of been in lockstep with the president. Do you think that's going to happen with the Senate? Basically, I'm saying who's going to be driving the car here?
Well, first of all, I obviously care a great deal about what President Trump and his administration thinks on issues that affect us in the Appropriations Committee or in general. There'll be issues where we agree and there'll be issues where we disagree. As far as my own priorities for the Appropriations Committee, biomedical research has always been a passion of mine. If we could, for example, come up with funding that helps to produce a cure for Alzheimer's disease, think what a difference it would make to families all over this country, and particularly in the state of Maine, the oldest state in the nation by median age. Another issue that really matters to me is a strong national defense. We are facing global threats that the combatant commanders tell me are the worst that we have seen since the end of World War II or the beginning of World War II. So a strong national defense, I believe in Ronald Reagan's peace through strength, matters a great deal to me. It also supports thousands of good jobs in our state, from Bath Iron Works, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, to a defense accounting center in northern Maine, Pratt & Whitney in York County, all over. Maine punches above its weight when it comes to our national defense. Rural development, it's not surprising, I'm from northern Maine, I'm from Caribou, is also a priority for me. That means workforce training, it means education, it means childcare. That helps bring people and sustain our rural communities. And finally, I would mention infrastructure. This is an issue that I've worked on for years, whether it's improving our roads, bridges, seaports, airports, but also expanding access to broadband to everywhere in the country is a real priority of mine.
And I want to ask you, you mentioned President Trump coming into office, that you're going to agree with him on some things, disagree on others. What's your current relationship with the president? Have you guys talked recently?
We have. I talked to him shortly after he was inaugurated. He came to a special lunch that senior members of the Senate and House were present, where we were present, and I did talk to him briefly and exchanged pleasantries. I congratulated him. I talked to Melania, the First Lady, and I also talked to him previously at a special brunch that was held a few days before with members of the Republican Senate. I am getting to know his chief of staff and some of the other key aides that he has, like Howard Lutnick, who's going to be Secretary of Commerce. I already know Linda McMahon, who is going to be Secretary of Education.
You guys have had your ups and downs over the years. I think it was after the first impeachment trial, you said that he's learned his lesson. Later you said that may have been aspirational. And then obviously in the second impeachment after January 6th, you did vote to convict. Do you think he's learned lessons from that? Or?
Well, first, and I'm glad you brought this up, in that interview, what I said was truncated. It was an example of really unfair reporting by CBS. And what they did is I said that I thought the president had learned his lesson, that it was a mistake to call a foreign leader without having staff on the phone and having others monitoring what was said so that he could prove what was said. That was cut off and distorted, and that phrase has been unfairly used for a very long time.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Nevertheless, you're right that I did not vote to convict him on the first trial. I did on the second, based on the evidence involving January 6th.
Does that complicate the relationship, where you're obviously a very important part of the discussion as the Appropriations chair?
I think we can work together. We're not going to always agree on issues. I don't agree with the president's pardon of violent individuals who were involved in the riot on January 6, 2021, and actually assaulted police officers. I have seen those assaults. I know a police officer who sent me the video and is very distraught that the 7 people who beat him have been released. He's always so worried. He's worried for his safety and that of his family. I think there was a case to be made for pardoning those individuals who are just swept up in the day, happened to be in the Capitol, for example, and had no criminal intent and did not commit violence. But there's a huge difference between violent crimes and nonviolent offenses. I also think that President Biden undermined the faith in the judicial system when, on his way out the door, he pardoned not only an individual who killed 2 FBI agents, but 5 members of his family, on top of the previous pardon that he gave to his son, Hunter.
In your history, you've certainly not been afraid to buck your party now and again. I could talk about the partial repeal of Obamacare, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, for example, and just recently you did so again. You were one of 2 senators to vote no on Pete Hegseth. Can you briefly talk to us about why you voted that way?
Our military is facing huge challenges right now. We not only have recruitment and retention challenges, but there are so many dangerous conflicts all over the world. And I want to make sure that we have a Secretary of Defense who has the experience and the perspective to be able to manage a huge organization, 3 million people, a budget of about $900 billion. This is an enormous job, perhaps the most important cabinet job, and I did not find that Mr. Hegseth had the experience and perspective that was needed. He had run 2 very small nonprofit organizations with decidedly mixed results. There were many accusations of mismanagement of those 2 organizations. And in addition, I was very troubled about his comments, and just months before he was nominated for this position, about the role of women in the military. Women comprise about 18% of our military. They play absolutely critical roles. And yet in his book, which was published just last year, he says that it's the role of women to be moms, and he really questioned whether they should be in the military at all, much less in combat roles. Now, I'm not saying that standards should be changed, but I know an awful lot of women who have met the standards, who are willing to put their lives on the line. And I did not find it convincing when Mr. Hegseth says that he's now okay with women in combat, given that he said so repeatedly and so recently that he did not think they belonged in combat roles.
And I want to move on to Maine specific, because I see we only have a few minutes, but real quick, do you have any indication of how you're planning to vote on RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel?
You know, I have always found that it is best for me to wait until the hearings are concluded, the personal interviews. In the case of the 3 individuals you've mentioned, I have done personal sit-downs with those 3, but I have not seen their hearings or participated in their hearings in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, which will be next week. So until I've done that and finished all of my due diligence, I think it would be premature for me to leap to a decision on how I'm going to vote.
As I look at the clock with just about 2 minutes left, Maine, I reached out to our Maine station and I said, what do you want to know? I'm about to sit down with your senator. They talked about a couple priorities, concern about whether wind projects off the ports might be impacted by new executive orders, tariffs with Canada, for example, right on the border. From your seat as the new Appropriations Chair, it seems like people are worried about economics, very much so, with those 2 topics. What's your message to the folks of Maine?
Well, first, I do believe that President Trump's top priority is getting inflation down and making the cost of living more affordable for Americans, and I share that goal. I do not support his proposal for tariffs on products from Canada. I met recently with the Premier of Prince Edward's Island, and he pointed out to me the blueberry processing. The blueberries are grown in eastern Maine. They are then shipped to PEI or other Canadian sites for processing. They're brought back in. The best example, though, that I can give you of how harmful a tariff would be is a paper mill that is in Madawaska, Maine. On the other side of the border, in Edmonton, Canada, New Brunswick, the pulp for this mill is produced, and the pulp is piped across the river to the American side where the paper mill is. There the paper is produced. If there is a tariff put on the pulp, it will be devastating for that paper mill. There are so many areas. We have wood flows that go back and forth. Our lumber being used in Quebec mills, Canadian lumber being used in the mill that's in Washington County. The wood flows go back and forth in such a way that it's vital for the Canadian provinces and for our mills. Maine is Canada's biggest trading partner and vice versa. And I believe that one area that's been overlooked is we get a lot of our heating oil from Canada. And home heating oil is what most Maine homes still use. It's more than 75%. If you put a tariff on home heating oil, which is already very expensive to heat Maine's homes, it is going to be devastating. So I'm trying to get the administration to think more thoroughly about the ramifications. I met with the head of a company in North Berwick, Maine, that makes stadium seating, and it gets some of its materials from Canada, some from China. Most of it's produced in the United States, but it can't get everything it needs in the United States.
And the clock has expired, but as we leave out, I just wanted to ask, you've seen 8 Senate majority leaders in your time, 5 presidents. Over all this time, how has Washington changed?
Washington has become more partisan over the years. Now, the partisanship has ebbed and flowed over the years, but it's more polarized now. We have groups on the far left in particular, but also on the far right, who want you to be with them 100% of the time, or they threaten you with all sorts of consequences. And I think we need to look for common ground. And that's what I try to do. I'm very proud to be the first Mainer in nearly a century to chair the Appropriations Committee. And my job, as I see it, is to try to get things done and to work with everyone, the administration, Democrats, Republicans, and try to accomplish what we need to do to improve life for the people of Maine and the people in this great country.
Senator Susan Collins, thank you so much for speaking with us for 18 and a half minutes. So your congressperson can yell at me.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button here. You can also download our app and watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.